Have you ever felt that sudden chill, the kind that crawls up your spine when you're alone in a room? Or maybe you've heard whispers in the dark, faint but unmistakable, as if something, is trying to reach you. And what about those fleeting shadows at the edge of your vision, vanishing the moment you turn to look? We've all heard ghost stories, tales of spirits trapped between worlds, lingering among the living. But what if I told you, ghosts aren't what you think they are? Welcome to today's episode of our Buddhism Podcast, where we're diving deep into one of humanity's oldest mysteries, the unseen world of spirits, ghosts, and the supernatural. But we're not here for horror stories or urban legends. We're here for truth, and Buddhism has a lot to say about it. In many cultures, ghosts are seen as lost souls, wandering in suffering, searching for something they can't find. But in Buddhist teachings, ghosts, or what some traditions call petas, aren't just external entities. They're reflections of the human condition, mirrors of our desires, fears, and attachments. What if the ghosts we fear the most aren't in the shadows, but within us? Buddhism teaches us that the spirit world isn't separate from our own. It's deeply connected to our karma, our emotions, and the way we live our lives. Some spirits, according to Buddhist belief, are bound by their past actions, unable to move forward because of attachment, greed, or suffering. And if we look closely, aren't we sometimes like them, trapped by our own cravings, repeating the same patterns, unable to let go? Think about it. How many times have you clung to something long after it was gone? A relationship, a grudge, a past mistake. How often do we haunt ourselves with regret, with longing for things that no longer exist? In a way, we become our own ghosts, stuck in cycles of suffering, refusing to move on. But here's the most powerful part of this teaching. Just as we are capable of becoming trapped, we are also capable of finding liberation. In Buddhist practice, recognizing our own attachments is the first step toward release. Through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we can set ourselves free, not just from the fears of the supernatural, but from the ghosts of our own making. So maybe the next time you feel that chill, or hear a whisper in the dark, instead of fear, ask yourself, what am I holding on to? What is still haunting me? Because the truth is, ghosts don't just exist in haunted houses. They exist in our minds, in our hearts, in the places we refuse to let go. And when we understand this, when we truly see the nature of our fears, something incredible happens. We no longer run from ghosts, we free them. And in doing so, we free ourselves. By the end of this episode, you may never see ghosts the same way again. But more importantly, you may never see yourself the same way again. This is the Buddhism Podcast, where we explore the unseen, the unknown, and the truths that lie beyond fear. If this episode resonates with you, take a deep breath, let go of what no longer serves you, and step forward into the light of awareness. Because the greatest mystery isn't out there, it's within. Ghosts. Just hearing the word is enough to send a shiver down your spine. It stirs up images of eerie figures lurking in the dark, whispering from the shadows. But what if everything you thought you knew about ghosts was wrong? What if the stories told in horror movies barely scratched the surface of something far more profound? In Buddhism, ghosts aren't what Hollywood makes them out to be. There are no chains rattling in the night, no vengeful spirits trapped for eternity. Instead, Buddhist teachings speak of petas, also known as hungry ghosts. And these beings aren't wandering aimlessly, seeking revenge or trying to haunt the living. Their suffering is real, and it all comes down to one thing: attachment. The Buddha taught that every being is shaped by their past actions, their karma. The choices we make, the emotions we cling to, and the way we treat others all create the conditions for what happens next, not just in this life, but beyond it. Those who lived consumed by greed, selfishness, or cruelty might find themselves reborn into a realm of endless craving. The hungry ghost realm. Imagine a life where no matter how much you try to satisfy your desires, it is never enough. A thirst that can't be quenched, a hunger that can't be fed. This is the world of the petas, souls who, in life, could not let go of their attachments and now suffer as a result. They are not punished by some external force. They are simply experiencing the consequences of their own minds. But here's where it gets truly fascinating. Unlike in Western ghost stories, where spirits are often doomed to wander indefinitely, Buddhism teaches that change is always possible. Even those trapped in suffering are not beyond transformation. They are not permanently lost. The living, us, have the power to help them. Through acts of kindness, generosity, and the generation of merit, we can offer them the energy they need to move forward. In many Buddhist traditions, families make offerings to ancestors, not just out of respect, but to actively aid their journey. It is believed that the sincere intention to share merit can bring peace to suffering spirits, helping them transition toward a better state of existence. And if ghosts, beings weighed down by their own cravings, can be liberated, what does that mean for us? It means we too are never truly stuck. No matter how much we struggle with our own attachments, no matter how many times we find ourselves chasing something we think will make us happy, we have the power to let go. We have the power to transform. So the next time you hear about ghosts, don't think of them as distant, supernatural beings. Think of them as mirrors, reflections of the human experience. They are reminders of what happens when we cling too tightly to what cannot last. But they are also reminders that no matter how lost we feel, there is always a way forward. This is the Buddhism Podcast, where we explore the unseen, the unknown, and the truths that lie beyond fear. If this episode has made you see ghosts and yourself in a new light, take a moment to reflect. What are you holding on to? And more importantly, are you ready to let it go? Now, you might be wondering, what about real-life ghost experiences? Are they just tricks of the mind, hallucinations? It's a great question, and this is where science comes into play. Modern neuroscience has shown us something fascinating about the way our brains work. Our brains are wired to seek patterns, even in randomness. We have a deep, almost instinctive drive to make sense of the world around us. This is why, when fear takes hold, our minds start to distort reality. In moments of heightened emotion, we may see things that aren't there at all. A shadow flickers in the corner of our eye. A sudden chill sweeps over us, and in that moment, we might jump to conclusions. Ghosts, spirits, or something otherworldly. Studies also reveal that certain areas of the brain, like the amygdala, which is responsible for processing fear, can trigger these types of experiences. When this part of the brain is activated, especially under stress or fear, it can create the illusion of ghostly encounters. This doesn't necessarily mean that ghosts don't exist, though. In fact, Buddhism offers a fascinating perspective that blends our internal experiences with the external world. Buddhism suggests that what we perceive as ghosts could be the result of a mix between external energies and our own internal states. This perspective invites us to reconsider the idea of haunting. What if the haunting isn't something that resides in the place itself, but rather within the person experiencing it? What if the fear and discomfort we feel are, in part, reflections of our unresolved emotions or fears? Could the ghosts we sense be manifestations of our own inner turmoil? Take a moment to think about this. The Buddhist view holds that the mind itself is the most powerful force shaping our reality. The things we see, the things we feel, they aren't just external occurrences. They are influenced by the inner state of our minds. In Buddhism, there is a deep emphasis on how our emotions and attachments color our perception of the world. So, if our minds are constantly filled with fear, anxiety, or unfulfilled desires, could that be what causes us to perceive these ghostly apparitions? This leads us to a profound insight. The ghosts we see may not always be something external to us at all. They might be reflections of our own unresolved fears, cravings, and attachments that haven't been dealt with. They could be the lingering emotions from our past that refuse to be put to rest. It's a sobering thought, but also a powerful one. What if the real ghosts in our lives are not some supernatural beings lurking in the dark, but the fears and attachments that we carry inside us? This isn't to say that there aren't energies or forces beyond our understanding. Buddhism acknowledges that there are realms beyond our comprehension, but it also teaches that our perceptions are deeply influenced by our minds. If we can learn to let go of our attachments, our fears, and our unfulfilled desires, we may find that the ghosts in our lives lose their power over us. What if the key to understanding the presence of ghosts, real or perceived, is not to chase after them, but to turn inward and face the unresolved emotions within ourselves? The teachings of Buddhism invite us to ask, what are we holding on to that is still haunting us? What in our lives is crying out for release? When we address these internal struggles, the external world often follows suit. This is the power of mindfulness and meditation, tools that help us confront the shadows of our own minds, transforming what once haunted us into opportunities for growth and understanding. So, as you reflect on what you've just heard, ask yourself, are the ghosts that haunt you truly outside of you, or are they reflections of what remains unsettled within your own heart and mind? The answer to that question may just unlock the key to your own liberation. This is the Buddhism Podcast, where we explore the unseen, the unknown, and the transformative power of our own minds. If this episode has sparked something in you, take a moment to sit with it. In the silence of your thoughts, what do you find? If Buddhist teachings are right, if spirits are truly suffering due to their past actions, then a profound question arises. Can we help them? And the answer, according to the Buddha's wisdom, is a resounding yes. In the Tirukutta Sutta, an ancient Buddhist text, the Buddha explains something extraordinary. Merit, the positive energy generated through acts of kindness, generosity, and mindfulness, and can be shared with those who have passed. This is not just a metaphor or a comforting tradition. It is a fundamental practice deeply woven into many Buddhist cultures. Think about this for a moment. What if our actions in this life could extend beyond the boundaries of the physical world? What if our love, our compassion, and our goodness could reach those who are suffering in unseen realms? The idea that we can help the departed is not just a belief, it is a practice, one that has been carried out for centuries across Buddhist communities. Families make offerings of food, recite chants, and dedicate their good deeds to their ancestors, believing that such acts can provide relief to those trapped in suffering. But here's where it gets even more powerful. This practice is not just about them. When we cultivate generosity and extend our kindness to others, whether they are living or deceased, something remarkable happens within us as well. Buddhism teaches that suffering arises from attachment. The more we cling, whether to possessions, relationships, identities, or even our grief, the more we reinforce the cycle of craving and dissatisfaction. But the moment we shift our focus outward, when we give freely without expecting anything in return, we begin to dissolve these attachments. We break the very cycle that creates suffering in the first place. In other words, helping the dead is not just about relieving their suffering. It becomes a path to freeing ourselves as well. When we give, we let go. And when we let go, we transform. This is the deeper truth behind the Buddhist practice of offering merit. It is an act of love, one that transcends the illusion of separation between the living and the dead. It reminds us that no being is ever truly isolated. The suffering of the departed is not so different from the suffering we carry in our own hearts. Their cravings, their regrets, their inability to move on, are these not the same struggles we face every day in different forms? If we take this teaching to heart, then the question becomes even more personal. Who in our own lives, living or dead, needs our kindness? And more importantly, how can we offer it? Compassion is a force that moves in all directions. When we send it outward, it doesn't diminish, it grows. When we dedicate our good deeds to others, we don't lose anything, we gain something immeasurable. A mind that is free from attachment, a heart that is lighter, a spirit that is no longer bound by fear. So maybe, in helping the dead, we are not only bringing peace to those who have moved on, maybe, just maybe, we are also finding a way to heal ourselves. This is the Buddhism Podcast, where we explore the unseen, the unknown, and the deepest truths of human existence. If this episode has made you think differently about what it means to give, take a moment to reflect. What can you offer today, not just for others, but for your own liberation? Because in the end, the path to freedom is not found in holding on, but in learning to let go. Forget everything you think you know about the afterlife. Forget the stories of eternal paradise or everlasting torment. Buddhism offers a different perspective, one that isn't based on reward or punishment, but on the natural flow of cause and effect. In Buddhist teachings, there is no fixed soul, no unchanging self that moves from one life to another. Instead, consciousness is like a river, constantly flowing, shifting, transforming. At the moment of death, that flow doesn't simply stop. It continues, shaped by the ripples of our past thoughts, words, and actions. This is what we call rebirth. Imagine your life as a candle. When one candle burns out, its flame can be used to light another. The new flame isn't identical to the first, but it is connected. This is how consciousness moves forward, carrying the essence of who we were, without clinging to a permanent identity. This is where karma comes in, not as divine judgment, not as some mystical force of punishment and reward, but as a law of nature. Every thought we have, every action we take, every word we speak creates an imprint. These imprints shape not only the world around us, but also the trajectory of our own existence. So, what happens at the moment of death? The Buddha taught that the state of our mind in those final moments holds immense power. If we die in anger, regret, or fear, that energy doesn't just disappear. It influences what comes next, not as a punishment, but as a continuation of the same patterns we've set in motion. But here's the good news. Just as our past shapes our present shapes our future. Every choice we make today is a step toward a different tomorrow. If you want peace in your next life, or even just peace in your next breath, start cultivating it now. So ask yourself, what energy are you carrying? What patterns are you reinforcing? What seeds are you planting? Buddhism isn't about waiting for an afterlife. It's about understanding that every moment is a cause, and every moment is an effect. Right now, you are shaping what comes next. And the beauty of it all, you have the power to change, to grow, to transform. This life isn't the beginning, and it won't be the end. But it is an opportunity to be mindful, to be kind, to be free. What will you do with it? Why are we so obsessed with ghosts? Is it really about the supernatural, or is it something deeper? Maybe it's not the ghosts themselves that scare us, but what they represent. Regret, unfinished business, the fear that we might leave this world with words unspoken, dreams unfulfilled, and attachments we never let go of. Ghost stories have existed in every culture, every generation. We see them in myths, in folklore, in movies. But why? Maybe it's because they force us to confront something we spend our entire lives trying to avoid, our own mortality. The truth is, we fear ghosts for the same reason we fear death, because they remind us that everything is temporary, that one day, we too will be nothing more than memories left behind. But Buddhism teaches a different perspective. It doesn't tell us to fear death. It tells us to understand it, to look at it with open eyes, instead of running from it. Because when we fear death, we don't just fear the end, we fear life itself. We hold back, we hesitate, we live cautiously, clinging to the illusion that we have more time. But what if we embraced impermanence instead? What if instead of being haunted by the past or the future, we truly lived in the present? The Buddha once said, It is in this very body that we find the world, the origin of the world, and the path that leads to its end. That means the answers we seek, about life, death, and everything beyond, aren't found in ghost stories. They're found within us. So ask yourself, what are you afraid of? Is it really ghosts? Or is it the fear of leaving things undone? The fear of not having truly lived? Because if we live fully, if we love deeply, act with wisdom, and walk our path with mindfulness, there is nothing to fear. When our time comes, we won't be bound by regret. We won't cling to what we should have said or done. We'll move forward just as naturally as a wave returns to the ocean. And maybe that's the real secret. Ghosts don't linger because of where they are. They linger because of what they couldn't let go of. So don't wait. Say what needs to be said. Do what needs to be done. Live in a way that, when your time comes, you won't be haunted by the life you didn't live. Because in the end, the greatest ghost story isn't about spirits. It's about us. The most powerful teaching of all. It's not about ghosts. It's not about spirits lingering in the shadows. It's not even about the afterlife. It's about you. The Buddha taught that the mind is the forerunner of all things. Every experience, every emotion, every fear, and every moment of peace, they all begin within the mind. It is the birthplace of our suffering and the key to our liberation. Think about that for a moment. The way we see the world is not just shaped by what happens to us, but by how we choose to perceive it. Fear, anger, regret. These things don't come from outside forces. They come from within. And if they come from within, then we have the power to change them. So instead of fearing ghosts, fear something real. Fear the unexamined mind. The mind that runs on autopilot, trapped in the same patterns, repeating the same mistakes. Fear a life wasted on meaningless distractions, on chasing things that will never bring lasting happiness. Fear attachment to things that will eventually fade. But more importantly, don't just fear it. Do something about it. The Buddha didn't teach us to live in fear. He taught us to wake up, to be present, to cultivate wisdom and compassion. He taught that we are not prisoners of our past, nor are we bound by our fears. We are human, and as humans, we have the ability to change, to grow, to transform. But transformation doesn't happen by accident. It happens when we make the choice, right here, right now, to live with intention, to see things clearly, to let go of what no longer serves us. So start today. Start paying attention to your thoughts. Start questioning your fears. Start making choices that bring you peace instead of regret. Because in the end, it's not the ghosts of the dead that haunt us. It's the ghosts of the life we didn't live, the words we didn't say, the love we didn't share, the kindness we withheld. But the good news? You're still here. You still have time. And as long as you're breathing, you have the power to change your story. So what will you do with it? So, what have we learned? Ghosts, in the Buddhist sense, are real, not as vengeful spirits lurking in the dark, but as beings trapped in suffering, unable to let go of what has already passed. But if we look deeper, we might realize something even more unsettling. The scariest ghosts are the ones we carry within us. They are the regrets that whisper in the silence, the attachments that weigh on our hearts, the fears we refuse to face. We haunt ourselves more than any spirit ever could. But here's the thing. Buddhism doesn't teach fear. It teaches understanding. The Buddha didn't ask us to believe in unseen forces. He asked us to examine the mind, to recognize that everything we experience, joy, sorrow, peace, suffering, arises from within. And that means we have a choice. We don't have to be haunted by the past. We don't have to be trapped by our fears. We don't have to carry the weight of old wounds forever. Because in every moment, we are shaping our reality. Our thoughts, our words, our actions. They are all creating the world we live in. If we fill our minds with anger, the world will seem hostile. If we cling to fear, everything will feel like a threat. But if we cultivate awareness, if we choose compassion, if we embrace impermanence with an open heart, then life itself becomes lighter. So if there's one thing to take away from this, it's this. Your mind creates your reality. Not fate, not spirits, not forces beyond your control. You. The question is, what kind of world are you creating? What kind of story are you telling yourself? Because in the end, the most powerful ghosts aren't the ones that haunt abandoned houses. They're the ones that haunt us from the inside. And the moment we see them for what they are, just thoughts, just memories, just passing clouds in the sky, we set ourselves free. So choose wisely, choose presence, choose peace, choose to let go, because life isn't waiting, it's happening right now.